Hi, everybody. I am excited to be back today. I was off on staycation last week, and while it was nice, sometimes I feel like vacation's harder than the routine of work. And somehow being back here just is definitely a comfort zone for me. I'm thrilled today because um, while we're not making, I would suggest grabbing, a sketchbook or a piece of paper, a pencil, and to just take notes and do some visual journaling because what you are going to hear is, I think, mind blowing. I was extremely lucky last year to go to the Art Educators of New Jersey's fall conference. And there were several of us from Nasco, which doesn't happen very often. So that meant I got to take in a couple workshops. And I have a niece, Emma, who has a heart for social justice, and I wanted to make her proud. So I went to Lisa's social justice book club workshop. Life-changing. I promise you, I get goosebumps talking about it because I just couldn't believe what I was hearing and how it all went down. And so with that, I will introduce Lisa Hirkaler. She is a art educator from New Jersey. She taught AP Art History, which you'll see the connection in here, along with art. And just, you're a world changer, and I'm excited that you are here, Lisa. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm humbled, Chris, and Nasco, thank you for hosting this and offering this to teachers everywhere. It's needed, and I am just grateful, and I'm ready to start and share with you my social justice art and book club.
Yay.
So
and so I'll stay on,
yep.
but we'll turn it all over to you, and I'll stay on and throw a question out here or there as we go.
Okay.
But take over the stage, and thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Whoops.
So I'm starting my screen here. When we start with art history, we start with the prehistoric, and my students had a chance to see that women show up in art history from stone ages. You have this pigment on rock, and you have this shaman working with people, or maybe I'm not even going to describe it. Sometimes I'll put an image out there and invite my students to have a conversation with the artwork. Or this piece on the right, to my right, Mutu, where Ms. Mutu created work that deals with gender, identity, and was recently included at the Met in the facade in terms of sculptures for the first time. For your reference from now on, and we're sharing this PowerPoint later, when you see an asterisk, because the images belong to College Board, when you see that from now on in this PowerPoint, they will be attributed to College Board, and you can go to the link on the bottom of this page to go to the course description. I encourage all students to take AP Art History, although it's really difficult and it's the best thing for you. I really encourage not just art students, but all students to examine cultures across time. So Ms. Mutu has a body of work, and I want to say it's maybe 4 or 6 sculptures that were placed in the niche or the facade of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And just to save time, I included links to the sites and to the museum so you can see her work. And we celebrated as a class the first time a woman of color, a woman, and a sculptor featured on the front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We had a chance to take our students to New York. I'm currently in New Jersey as a teacher in New Jersey. I taught high school art for 18 years. I've taught the young child, and now I'm going to teach the middle school child. And I really think it's important to take the students to see authentic art, to see real art, to make art, to read about art, and to really appreciate that each culture leaves behind something that they hold precious and they want to be remembered by. However, that road to be remembered by has a rocky start, and in the last article from the New York Times talking about Ms. Mutu, we also see the history that Carol Walker portrays in her silhouette pieces. That in our history in the United States, there are difficult conversations and difficult parts of our history that we must acknowledge and discuss. Carol Walker does this with her silhouettes, and seemingly at first glance, I thought it was lovely, the black silhouettes. I'm always interested that in this paper cut silhouette. My mom had some from the Victorian ages, or replicas, I should say. And so I was interested in this form of art. But on looking and examining further, we see some of the injustice that's rooted in slavery and oppression. To look is not enough. We need to take a moment and to really see, to acknowledge. And when you're acknowledging something, I'm not saying that we have to really investigate with a critical lens, but to have an open mind and an open heart to what the artist is trying to say. And to try to limit our lens just enough to really let the artist speak to you with the artwork. Some of the artists in the AP curriculum and the works that you have just viewed so far are all in the AP Art History curriculum, although I think they are important for all students. With this work, they push the boundaries between sculpture, and I'm a sculptor and I'm a painter, but pushing the boundaries on what's allowed. Can we take a European painting and convert it into a sculpture, behead the woman, and then put this piece out there in a way that raises so many questions on why? And I really think it's important for our students to ask those questions. Something that we discussed as a class was the book, The Hate You Give. And in my research, The Hate You Give led me to the understanding and the quote by Tupac on the hate you give, and Thug Life quote comes back to you. And I'll let you examine that later. And I also have embedded in this PowerPoint an interview from the author, Angie Thomas, and the movie trailer. So my student came to me, my AP Art History student, Donna, came to me at the end of class, and we were talking about gender, and we were talking about race, and we're talking about people of color, and her position as this beautiful Black woman who's also white and Black, and all these labels, and the intensity of how it feels to be a young woman of color in a predominantly white school. And so the conversation started that she wanted more. And then the other students agreed that they wanted more in a private setting after school. And so that was where the Social Justice Book Club, Art Club started. Of course, I had an art club for almost 17 years, and it was a place that I hold precious to be safe, again, with an open mind and an open heart. A place where students feel the art room is their room, where they can have conversations, difficult conversations, where they're not judged, because I always believe in student-driven instruction, projects, and discussions. In this piece here, we showed the trailer for The Hate U Give. We looked at the book art before and after the movie. We discussed the book on Audible. The audio book is fantastic. The narration is beautiful. And in the document I have attached, I've included some of my favorite Audible, and the narration is just fantastic. Audible offers 3 free books when you sign up with a new account. I didn't know that you could read a book, return a book, get another book until well after a year of having Audible. So let me share that with you also. But The Hate U Give really is about a teenager in school, and it deals with a teenage boy losing his life at the hand of a police officer. However, we do not project hate on anyone, not on police, not on disparity in color and what happens, but we took time to really look and to really see. And so I'll stay with that again. We looked at artwork by Basquiat, and for some students, they question the craftsmanship right away. And then on sitting and looking and reading and really examining the work longer, things start to come up in the artwork. And then we talk about his life. We talk about him being in the city, in and out of homelessness, couch surfing, graffiti artist, to meeting Andy Warhol, and then boom, 2 years ago, his work sold at the highest amount ever for a painting at Sotheby's, right? And then we take a look at what we have with Jacob Lawrence. There is a severe divide, an obvious divide. Yes, we can talk about the history of slavery, and we can talk about the history of freedom, and we could talk about segregation and then desegregation. But as Jacob Lawrence made his way from the South to the North, there were certain aspects of desegregation and segregation that were not complete. And we know it's not until we get to the 60s where we see a shift. But we know that the shift, or what I see here, is this wound in this painting is not quite healed yet, right? And so that's something that we'll examine again later. So, and so we go back to the books. We examine that artwork, And then my students were eager to share with me that they were reading All American Boys. And one of our teachers invited Brendan Keeling to our school to talk with them. So the place was on fire. Everyone was so excited that he was coming to school. And then that sent a campaign to read everything by these two writers, and especially for Jason Reynolds. He has poetry that's out there that's really fresh. and and I really responded to students wanting to learn more, students wanting to read more, and then discussing with me that the character in All American Boys, written in his part by Jason Reynolds, the boy of color that was the victim of a police altercation, and he ends up in the hospital, that the boy is an artist and that he reaches for his sketchbook. He reaches for his sketchbook as solace, as a way to express himself. He wasn't ready to articulate what happened yet, but yet in his sketchbook and with his words in a private space in his sketchbook, had a way to guide him to healing, to understand what happened, to see himself as something other than a victim or an event, but to see himself as an artist, able to express and able to share. I encourage the use of a sketchbook. Whether I see the sketchbook or not, I encourage the use of journaling and the old-fashioned diary. I wanted to share that he is a big fan of Aaron Douglas. And this is one of my favorite pieces from Aaron Douglas. And in this piece, he mentions the design, he mentions the color, and he tries to do something similar in his book. I'm not saying he's trying to copy it per se, but he's trying to capture the energy that's depicted. I have included in the PowerPoint a bunch of YouTubes that are from either the author or maybe a movie clip, something short and to the point. Most of them are only a few minutes long. Click on the blue link when you see it embedded in the PowerPoint. But Jason Reynolds offers these 2-minute YouTubes as a bit of inspiration as a writer, as an artist, and he loves art and includes that in the YouTubes and shares some of his reflections and offers really short, I want to say starters or a spark to get you to create. And you know, the idea of the journal is not new. I had the chance to listen to the diary of Anne Frank in Audible, and I promise you, the narration is fantastic. It is so modern, clear, and relevant that some people even feel that the diary that is used now, and this is a middle school, so far, All American Boys and Diary of Anne Frank are suggested for middle school. However, I would lean towards the 7th and 8th grader. I'm not sure about the 6th grader yet. I'm still doing research on age appropriate, but definitely I read Anne Frank when I was in middle school, and I forgot so much of her story, so much of her personal reflection, and the intensity that she shares. And at this time where students are home, I really think it's important to journal these times, whether we go back to school or we don't go back to school. It's important that these times of quarantine or this social distancing and staying at home, that even when she was home, and I'm not trying to compare the situations, but even when she was home, She took that journal, and the journal was her friend. Her kitty was like speaking to a girlfriend and reaching to it when she had conflict, reaching into that diary when she had love, when she questioned growing up. And I included a YouTube from the museum in here, and it's embedded. And we know that artwork that comes out of the Holocaust is important, again, to look back at history and have difficult conversations. Kath Kolowitz, this work is also part of the AP Art History curriculum, and it is something that we discuss. And we discuss the presence of the child in the artwork, and that the child represents hope. People are journaling, and I've been watching YouTubes on journaling and bullet journaling, and my lesson plans are going to be over the top this year between stickers and markers. I've just been keeping myself busy trying to express on the page, and as artists do, instead of feeling hopeless, making art gives you this sense of urgency, or gives me a sense of urgency. I have an art show right now at Studio Montclair Gallery where I took over a 20-foot window and I rearranged my sculptures, and you can follow my website and go look at that later at lisaocasioherkler.com. But I included this piece, and it is Frida Kahlo and her diary. Frida is part of our curriculum, and I wanted to share that with this book, I love the idea of going to the hard copy of the book, the hardcover, to really look at some of her diary pages, the intensity. And it doesn't have to be perfect art. I like the idea, one of my students, Freya, said, ugly art. I love the idea of making a mark, to get it out of your head, to put it in a sketchbook, to put it on a napkin, to take it out of your heart and put it on a page, to record a statement that you want to make. And I feel privileged to have both of these diaries and to use them as examples, not to copy, but to offer a bit of inspiration to my students. Some of these books are also listed on that additional document where I've included other books that I've read or listened to in Audible for you to examine as well. This work, the two Fridas, it's included in the AP curriculum, and sometimes I'll just let the students look at the work without any description, without information, give them time, then allow them to look on their phones or go to their iPads and their computers and research it because they want the information, right? But letting them wait. I had my students at the museum, and one of the most exciting things for me is to bring them in front of a work of art and have them look at the work for 3 minutes without a sound, to really look, and you develop this conversation with the artwork. It opens up this channel. I don't know, is it the Ka from Egyptian time with the eyes? But it's where the artist is really allowed to show you what they have created. And so that's something I really like sharing. And this one, in the House of Mango Street, I love putting the author up there with a quote by the author. And the author wanted to share some reflection on being Latina in the United States in a school, it's mostly white. And then given some of the things that have happened over time in the United States and across history, how she felt and how she reflects and how she incorporates this into her book. And so I added this piece in there. Again, this is another work, House on Mango Street, All American Boys. I'm lucky to be in a district that supports literature that is diverse. Talking to a good friend of mine, Carol really suggested this book, and it was just maybe last week, the week before, Esperanza Rising. She teaches 5th grade, and I was looking for books that were middle school appropriate and that would be excellent. And so her suggestion was to try this book, and I promise you, the audio and the Audible is just fantastic. Between the song that comes in, the language, I included the author in here who also based this book on her grandmother's experience coming from Mexico into the United States, and that the character creates yarn dolls in the book. And the character, Esperanza, learns how to crochet, and crochet in a language from her grandmother, where she's knitting the mountains and then going down into the valleys for the chevron pattern. I included some of my favorite YouTubes on how to crochet. Again, I am a fiber artist, so the idea of including fibers into your class, it's really beautiful seeing students handle fiber. I've taught clay for so many years, but I do appreciate students using fiber because there's a cultural component to fiber. And fiber is something that you take for granted. Like, where did this cotton, is it even cotton wool? I don't know. Where does it come from? And how did they make it? How do you make material? I just think that those are fascinating. And then when you go to the cultural connection to textiles, I think it's important and also part of AP Art History. She even mentions the Lady of Guadalupe. The Lady of Guadalupe is also an image that is in the art history curriculum, and the Lady of Guadalupe is examined carefully. I had the such an honor of seeing a fantastic representation in Peru at a monastery, and the Guadalupe was celebrated by the people in a way that I had never seen before, with flowers, with pictures of children, and with prayer beads, and just it was, for me, very emotional to see that. And of course, I brought my students to St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, and they also have a Lady of Guadalupe for the strong Latinx community in New York City. And it is an important part of the culture and the idea of the roses. And the roses show up in the book as well. This image is part of the AP curriculum, and it represents the Puerto Rican barbershop. Now, these barbershops are a little bit of your therapy, beauty parlor, and then a community center for men in New York City. And it's part of the curriculum, but also we can see here the roses show up again. The identity with the Spanish culture, with the Puerto Rican flag on there as well. And I just wanted to include this image and segue to another great Audible. Elizabeth Acevedo, it is just a fantastic piece of poetry. And when you hear that spoken word, or the way she writes and captures her intensity, her relationships either with her family or with a boy, girl, her brother is, and the gender and identity is questioned. It just covers so much in this book. I really encourage you. And again, I would go to the older child with some of these, 7th, 8th grade, but definitely for high school. And on the top here, I love the shout out from Lori Halsey Anderson, and we'll get to her later. Speak was one of my favorite books that my boys had to read, and I couldn't help it. I finished it in a sitting, and I was so glad that they had that. Lori Anderson has been writing about these difficult conversations. She's been writing about some of the unspeakable, right? In the book Speak, the character is an art student and feels the only one she'll talk to is the art teacher. She's given a sketching and a prompt from a globe. I don't know, I feel like I have to get a globe and try this, where he put prompts in there and the student had to take a word, and I think hers is the tree, and she has to go and expand on that. Except she was a victim of a sexual crime, and she didn't want to speak to anyone. She got in trouble from calling the police, and the kids didn't want to speak to her. And I'm not going to spoil it till the end, but it's another one of those books, whether you're going to listen to it on Audible or read the hardcover, it is one of those books that across time still comes up, right? Whether it's sexual harassment, abuse, we don't know what our kids are going through. And if they could articulate and even remember things that happen. And I'm not saying I'm a therapist and I'm not a counselor, but as an art teacher, and the art teacher that's represented in this book, Speak, offers a kind heart, an open mind, and gives her materials and a space for her to express, especially since she couldn't express herself in the whole school, and she was selecting to not speak beyond that room. And so I just want you to really think about that in your students and the students you have in your class. Next, we go to LGBTQ, and I don't want to rush through this, but when we look at the LGBTQ and we look at the statistics that are out there for the kids that are in this gender identity or sexual identity, wherever they are on this path. I have a student that is transgender, and I asked her what was her favorite book, and she offered me this one, Red, a Crayon Story, where in this story the crayon is blue but was labeled red, and tries at school to color the correct strawberry, but doesn't quite get it to red until her friend says, I need you to help me color the ocean for my boat. And when she colors the ocean with her crayon, it all makes sense. And everyone sees the crayon in its truth. Another book that we did read in our social justice book club is If You Were My Girl, and Meredith really captures her story as a trans young woman in high school. And I would suggest it for high school students. It is really carefully capturing her story. it turns out that Marvel product has focused on a student that happens to be in our district. And so I don't have her image on here. I don't have permission. But these are available through Marvel on YouTube, or the Disney Channel has a glimpse of her and her mom discussing some of the LGBTQ changes in terms of law and curriculum that will be coming down the line in the state of New Jersey. So yeah, Rebecca, I can't wait to meet you next year in middle school. Something else that is timely and in the news right now is the idea that race and labels, racism, should lead us now at this point to anti-racism. And I applaud those that have taken that put your money where your mouth is attitude and have changed those terms that have been offensive to people that have been in this country and first people from this country. In the Roundhouse, I would definitely suggest it is for high school. The mother in the character faces a brutal rape on the reservation. And there's a bunch of data out there on people on the reservation, women on the reservation facing sexual harassment and beyond. And there is no recourse because this disparity and reservation crime and white or non-reservation. And so I am still in the middle of this book, and it's heavy. And it's told from the perspective of her son. And so it's really quite moving. The artwork here, Jane Quick to See, is also on our curriculum in AP Art History. And I really think working with collage is something that students that are artistic or may have never experienced art in the classroom, but something that's great after school. Collage and just express. The New York Times is following that idea on what happened in the NFL and the shift. People are listening. Racism is coming to light. It is not taken for granted. I think about Ruby Bridges and about where she is and where she is now. I included a fantastic YouTube, and it interviews her now. Interviews her and her reflection on Black Lives Matter and her support. Imagine that Ruby Bridges in the 1960s, a brave 6-year-old little girl, is still having these difficult conversations. She can't do it alone. Yes, she has this strong sense of spirituality. And I've been following Dr. Robert Coles for years and his work with children and spirituality. He wrote the book on the side here from, published by Scholastic. And I included his YouTube on just his reflection that he wondered, at one point, Ruby stops, looks at the crowd, and he wants to know what she said. And what she did is she prayed for the people and quoted, "For they do not know what they're doing." I think I heard that before. Oh, and then this image. I'm just so proud of this moment. That yes, that is our America. Our America has been through hard times. We can put an image like this up and discuss it as a class. Take a moment. Some people don't notice the baby on the bottom, but again, the baby represents hope. And there are some things that happens in this country that we need to remember. Japanese people in camps is something we need to still talk about. Thinking about work from China, and on here in the piece by Ai Weiwei and his work talking about injustice, he doesn't stop. He's not going to stop. If you want further information on art from China, yes, I've written extensively on Chinese artwork that shows up in the AP curriculum. I've traveled to China, Japan, through Southeast Asia just last year. And yes, there is more to say on this, but we're running out of time. I'm sorry to cut this short, and this work is also part of the curriculum. We didn't even get to discuss the plight of this woman in this world and her rights, or feminism. But feminism, as in terms of an Islamic woman, it's another conversation. Not to make it light, but Kabbalah Beauty School is really a beautiful story. If you don't have time for the whole book to share with your students, sometimes I remember doing current events. You had to cut the thing from the newspaper way back when people had newspapers, and you had to write a response to the current events article, and you had to bring it in. This article is about teenagers getting in trouble for using sidewalk chalk and getting arrested. I need to know more, and I'm sure my students will also. And again, I am very careful not to disrespect police in any way, because of course, there are great professionals, and those of us that serve, we know we go into it with a heart to serve people. I included some New York Times articles for you, and again, I thank you. With only love and wishes for you, and as a safe teacher and safe hearts, and for our schools, especially during this time, peace. Be the change you wish to see in your classroom. Safe spaces start with a good heart, an open heart, and an open mind. Have those difficult conversations. Be brave and stay the course.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness. It was as awesome as it was a year ago, and you've clearly added so many current things, and thank you so much. I have a whole page of notes myself to chit chat with you. First thing is talk a little bit about administration approval and like parental approval, like how you went about that kind of those kind of issues.
Okay, so I am really lucky. I have had supportive administration over the years. My advice is to document what you would like to, or come up with a book list and share that. But another thing, to fill out the right paperwork. For my school, it was, use the building after school form. You had to do that. Do a professional development for your colleagues so they know what you're talking about. And just try to follow the rules. Although I've gotten in trouble for not following
Lisa,
all the
you don't
rules.
have to share your screen anymore.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is it on? Okay. So find out what the protocol is. And usually this doesn't happen by itself. You know, someone has a book club, someone has an art club, and have a conversation with another teacher on how to get something like this started. Talk to the students that are starters, the leaders, and encourage them. Or for, as in my case, Donna was probably the really quiet student, but had a lot to say and wanted a private space with a handful of kids or a dozen kids to start.
Oh my gosh, the questions are like flooding in.
Okay,
It's,
okay.
it's awesome. It's awesome. So next question was your group diverse?
Yes, yes, that was key. And diverse, as in Donna is black. Is black. She's in Syracuse now. She's doing great, and her dad is white, and so we had other kids in there from the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance Club. We had kids in there that were in the Political Alliance Club. We had a few boys, mostly girls. We had a trans girl. So we were careful on the books, but with intention to make sure that we were covering the idea of social justice and looking at what was happening, whether it's in the state or what was happening, and especially what's happening in justice right now. You can just appreciate what's happening for the LGBTQ community right now in terms of the Supreme Court. And so I thought that was important. So yes.
And it's interesting too. I grew up in a very, very predominantly white community. And so to have a diverse group would have virtually been impossible. But I think at that point, it becomes important to reach out and find some diversity to get the expert advice and the experience, and to look for the diversity, and to actually read these books and have the conversations, because otherwise, if you don't learn at all, which I think is what happened to a lot of us growing up. It was a don't talk about it situation. Elementary, you talked a little bit about the book Red, but you could adapt this on an elementary level, correct?
Yeah, so in my research, I found a bunch of resources. So I would go back to the document that I've attached in NSTOY, the National Network of State Teachers of the Year, a few years back. They compiled a list of books that deal with social justice. So this idea actually started looking at that list and the work that and the time that they put in compiling their favorites. So I feel like the work was, and their research was vetted, like these are the superstars of the whole country, taking their favorite books and putting it out there. And so I started there. I definitely feel that it's something that we should start at a younger age. And I get the idea that, you know, it might be too sensitive with some of the topics, but I think that there is this idea that goes through all of the books, that there's hope, there's something that you can do, that when you know better, you do better. And I would liken it to the idea and the conversations we have around bullying.
Yeah, very good. Next question was, do you have a place where you actually put student work? Like, do you put your students' work online? Do you put them on, or Sonia, I know you had them do sketchbooks and you actually allowed it to be private. Talk about connecting art with the book club and if the artwork should be posted anywhere, and if you do?
So I haven't yet, but Sarah, the teacher that I'm stepping into her, I can't step into her shoes, I'm stepping into her classroom, did offer that as a suggestion to do Artsonia. So it's not something that I did at the high school level, but I'll definitely do that at the middle school level. And so I will start posting work. With social justice or work that is very personal, I don't put it in social media. I don't do it without permission. I haven't included work here because I did not get permission from the students, and I really think that's important. However, my professor at Columbia, Dr. Burton, she said that some students do work and they keep it under the bed, meaning that they're going to make their mark. They're going to sketch, or they're going to write stuff down. They're going to make it in music. They're going to do it in sculpture. However they make it, they might want to keep it hidden. And that is okay. I don't have to examine everything. I don't get really upset when there's language in there, curses, I mean. I will, if a red flag goes and someone wants to do self-harm, of course I'm gonna run to the authorities and get the student help. But if they just want to express with, say, color or a vibrancy, or they just want to just get it out of here and throw it up on the page, I get that. I'm an artist also. Sometimes it's just about the process.
What rules do you provide students to keep things safe before conversation starts?
So I love putting the artwork out there first and let the student bring up information about the artwork. I guess one of my favorites is the Aaron Douglas piece, where you don't really see everything right away. It takes a moment for you to see the subtlety, but then it becomes so striking. You start to see the shapes on one side are the palm trees of hope, but on the one side in the beginning, they were really like the hoods from the KKK, and how he plays with design and negative space into positive space. It takes time to really look at that painting. It takes time in a Jacob Lawrence to really see that crack in the earth. And there's another work in the AP curriculum from Doris, who deals with immigration and that same crack in the earth, that there's a definitive line that separates you and immigrants here or there, and that crack, although it heals, sometimes the scar is still evident. Even with a work like Maya Lin and the Vietnam Wall, she captures the idea that there was a scar, something's left, something's not, it's not healed yet, right? And there's a part of reflection that you're part of that. And so I like putting works out there and let the student go. I believe in student-driven instruction. I believe in the Socratic method. I try to engage them to bring up more of their conversations, because if they come to realize, they will remember, they will connect it. That scaffolding that happens, they'll compare it to something else. And we know in our pedagogy, when you attach it to something else, and when you grow based on something that's a part of your life, the student will remember and dig deeper.
Lisa, do you have an Instagram?
Yes. I don't know the handle. Lisa Ocasio-Herkler or Lisa Herkler. I don't. You can find me. I got two doozies of a name. I'm
That
friends with
is
AOC,
excellent.
but I'm not actually related to her.
Do you listen to the books with the students, or does everybody listen together? I mean, separately?
So all of the above. So when I find an Audible that's fantastic, you're allowed. So I've subscribed for years now. You're allowed to share it with people, especially if they don't have it and they don't have to put their credit card for the first book. They can play it on their device. And you know the kids love doing that, right? Plugging it in and listening to it. Sometimes when the narration, the theatrics, it's just so powerful between tone and intensity. You can't help but fall in love with the book. So I definitely share the audibles, and we've all in the book club we did have very organized girls that were leaders, like Sarah, that she wanted to make sure, and with Donna too, that they wanted to make sure that each chapter, everyone was staying on track, and I think they looked in and maybe even students like Alexa, she would find like the book club discussion questions to make sure that we have the the questions that correlate with the chapter, and so that we go around the room and make sure every voice is heard around the room. So that was important too. Yes.
Looks like we have time for maybe two more questions, and then we'll wrap up. I can't believe how fast this hour has gone.
Yeah.
What was the name of the artist who did the piece with the Native American collage?
Jane Quick to See.
Jane Quick to See. Very good. Thank you very much. And last, do you ever get resistance on some of the titles that you have chosen? And typically you haven't chosen them. A lot of times it's your students, correct?
So yes, sometimes the students, and sometimes most of the works in this PowerPoint are from the AP Art History curriculum. However, I did add in pieces like Dorothea Lange, right? The students recognize her. They've learned about that part in history, but I love bringing in images that they may have found that have come up in their education over the years, and to reframe it or re-examine it, and to look at other work by Dorothea Lange, like the Japanese internment camps, right? To look at other works where she deals with social justice. And although she was commissioned by the government to go capture that, it really brought back a story of people that were overcoming hardship.
Oh my gosh. I am just telling you, it has been so great. I've been captivated, and clearly everybody who has joined has been captivated too. Thanks everybody for your awesome participation and your great questions. Just to let you know that next Monday, which is August 3rd, how did it get to be August? Like 2020 can be over anytime soon, but August, my gosh. So for the Maker Mondays in August, we're going to really do a big focus on distance learning. And so sometimes there'll be a hands-on component, sometimes there will not, but there'll definitely be things that you can hopefully use and plug into your own distance learning. I loved this too because the Social Justice Book Club can be done in a distance learning situation. I love the fact that there really isn't necessarily materials needed if they don't have anything. The fact that a student can go to the library, so it's very cost effective. And Lisa, you have just provided us with so much information. I can't thank you enough. You are a world changer. You have impacted students' lives beyond belief, and you certainly impacted me, and I am grateful to have you today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to add one more thing. For those of you teachers that want to dig deeper, I encourage you to either read or listen to So You Want to Talk About Race. To read or listen to, Audible is fantastic too, on White Fragility by D'Angelo. She captures what's happening right now. Stamped from the Start by Dr. Kendi is just fantastic and offers a historical part to it. Race Matters by Cornel West, and I'll leave you with this quote, that justice is what love looks like in public, just like tenderness is what love feels like in private.
Love it. Thank you so much. And
Thank
everybody,
you, Chris.
stay safe, stay well, and keep
Yes.
teaching art.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Chris. Such an honor.